All right. So today we're really diving into something I think really profound.
Mm-hmm.
The fight for a world without nuclear weapons.
Right.
And you've brought in some very compelling sources about Nihon Hidankyo, the organization of Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bomb survivors.
Yes.
And their recent Nobel Peace Prize win.
It's such a timely award, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It really puts a spotlight on the hibakusha as they're known.
Right.
At a moment when global tensions surrounding nuclear weapons are incredibly high.
It's chilling, really, how relevant their message is right now.
Yeah.
We're talking Russia making threats against Ukraine.
Right.
China's nuclear arsenal growing rapidly.
Yeah.
It's like the world is forgetting the hard lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
It seems that way sometimes.
So where do we even begin with this deep dive? I think understanding who the hibakusha are and what they represent is a good place to start, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Nihon Hidankyo, formed in 1956, is a testament to the enduring human spirit. These are individuals who stared into the abyss of nuclear war, enduring the unimaginable, the blinding flash, the searing heat, the radiation sickness that lingered long after the bombs fell.
Yeah.
They carry those scars, both visible and invisible, to this day.
It's hard to even fathom what they experienced. It's like trying to imagine a different reality, one where such devastation actually occurred.
Yeah.
And yet they chose to channel that experience, to dedicate their lives to making sure nobody else ever has to endure what they did.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's the core of their message, isn't it? A message of shared humanity. They're not pointing fingers or dwelling on blame.
Right.
Instead, they're urging everyone, regardless of nationality, ideology, or anything else, to recognize the universal threat that nuclear weapons pose.
Right.
Their message is fundamentally about peace.
Yeah.
But peace, not just as the absence of war.
Right.
But as a fundamental shift in how we interact with each other and the world.
Yeah, and the Nobel Committee recognized that.
Yeah, it did.
The prize money, around $1 million, is significant.
Yeah.
But for the hibakusha, this isn't about money.
Right.
It's about amplifying their message on a global scale.
Precisely think of it as handing them a megaphone that the entire world is suddenly paying attention to.
Yeah.
News outlets that may have only briefly touched on nuclear disarmament are now sharing the hibakusha's stories in detail.
Right.
Politicians who might prefer to focus on other issues are being forced to acknowledge the very real threat of nuclear war.
It's tragic, though, that it often takes something as prestigious as a Nobel Prize to make people pay attention to such a critical issue.
It's a harsh truth about the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with information.
Right.
And it's easy to shut out the things that make us uncomfortable, especially issues as complex and frightening as nuclear war. The hibakusha, through their sheer moral authority, cut through that noise.
Yeah.
Their experiences force us to confront the reality of what nuclear weapons actually mean.
And the sources you shared paint a stark picture of that reality, wouldn't you say?
They do. Russia's veiled threats towards Ukraine, hinting at the potential use of nuclear weapons, are deeply unsettling.
Yeah,
And China, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, is projected to possess as many nuclear weapons as the U.S. within the next few years.
See, it's not just about the quantity of weapons, though, right? It's the rhetoric surrounding them that's truly alarming. Putin's recent revision of Russia's nuclear doctrine, potentially lowering the threshold for their use, sends shivers down my spine.
It's scary.
These aren't just theoretical weapons locked away in some vault. They represent a dangerous mindset among some of the world's most powerful leaders.
Absolutely. And even when we move beyond the immediate threat of all-out nuclear war, there's the constant risk of accidents, miscalculations, or unforeseen events escalating into something catastrophic.
Right.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Even for those of us who've been following this issue closely.
It really is. But even amidst all of this heaviness, there's something inspiring, almost defiant about the hibakusha's resilience to experience such horror and then dedicate your life to ensuring it never happens again. That speaks volumes about the human capacity for hope, wouldn't you say?
It really does.
Yeah.
The hibakusha embodies this idea that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, hope can not only exist, but thrive.
And that brings us to what I find to be the most fascinating aspect of this whole story.
Okay.
The passing of the torch to younger generations.
Mm-hmm.
The articles highlight this tension between the hibakusha's aging population and the crucial need to ensure their message continues to resonate in a world that often seems all too ready to forget.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, will the world still be listening once the hibakushas are gone?
It's a question that weighs heavily on my mind as well. But there are glimmers of hope, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
The articles mention these high school students in Japan who are working directly with the hibakusha, learning their stories and pledging to carry the torch forward.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so heartening to hear about these young people growing up in a world saturated with information, choosing to dedicate themselves to this cause. It really speaks to the power of direct human connection. You can read facts and figures about nuclear war until you're blue in the face. But hearing a hibakusha share their story, feeling the emotion in their voice, that hits differently.
There's a rawness and immediacy to those stories that transcends the written word. It bypasses our intellectual defenses and goes straight to the heart. And that's why passing these stories on, ensuring they don't fade with time, is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. It reminds me of Terumi Tanaka, the Nagasaki survivor, who was only 13 years old when the bomb detonated. He's spoken extensively about the importance of connecting with young people, urging them to pick up the mantle and continue the fight for a nuclear-free world.
And at 91 years old, he's still fighting.
Wow.
The fact that he has dedicated his life to this cause, even after experiencing such unimaginable trauma, speaks volumes about his strength and resilience.
It's a powerful antidote to the cynicism and apathy we see so much of these days.
I agree.
Terumi Tanaka and the hibakusha as a whole embody this unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, hope can flourish and positive change is possible.
They remind us that peace isn't some passive ideal. It's an active struggle that demands courage, commitment, and a refusal to be silenced.
And it's a struggle that's becoming increasingly urgent with each passing year.
It is.
Our sources mention that the average age of the hibakusha is now over 85. They're literally in a race against time to share their message before it's too late.
It's heartbreaking, really. The articles highlighted how the number of prefectural hibakusha groups has dwindled. A stark reminder of their diminishing numbers. It makes you wonder, will the world pay attention once they're gone?
It's a chilling thought.
It is.
Or will their warnings fade into the background noise of history? That's a heavy thought. But I think this is where organizations like the Japan campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, which we touched on earlier, come into play. They're actively working to bridge that generational gap to connect the hibakusha with younger audiences who can carry their message forward.
It's so important. And let's not forget about the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, ICAN, which won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2017. Their work in raising awareness and pushing for a treaty banning nuclear weapons has been nothing short of remarkable.
Exactly. And their success demonstrates that action on this issue can take many forms.
Absolutely.
It can be supporting organizations like ICAN, educating yourself about the nuances of nuclear policy, or even just having those difficult but crucial conversations with friends and family.
Every conversation, every action, no matter how small it may seem, contributes to a larger movement for change. Because silence and apathy are the enemies here.
Couldn't agree more. It's about refusing to let this issue fade into the background to become just another depressing headline in an increasingly overwhelming news cycle.
It's about taking personal responsibility. The hibakusha have shown incredible strength and resilience by sharing their stories and fighting for a world without nuclear weapons. Now it's our turn to demonstrate that same strength by picking up the baton and continuing the race.
Well said. You know, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
The hibakusha's experiences, their message of peace, the current global landscape, the importance of intergenerational dialogue.
But
I want to shift gears for a moment and zoom out to the bigger picture. Throughout these articles, one word kept jumping out at me. Peace. What does that word actually mean?
That's an incredibly profound question, and one that I think humanity has been grappling with for centuries.
It's easy to throw the word around. But what does peace actually look like in practice? Is it simply the absence of war? Or is it something deeper, something more fundamental?
You've hit on something crucial here. Because if nuclear weapons represent humanity's capacity for destruction, for annihilation, then what do the hibakusha and their unwavering commitment to peace represent?
What does their refusal to succumb to despair, their dedication to creating a better future, tell us about our own potential for resilience, for compassion? What does it say about the power of the human spirit to choose hope, even when confronted with unimaginable darkness?
It's the question, isn't it? If our capacity for destruction is epitomized by nuclear weapons, that the Hibakusha, their resilience, their dedication to building a more peaceful world, that has to stand as a testament to something profoundly hopeful within us.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to humanity, showing us that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, we're capable of extraordinary compassion, courage, and resilience. But there's another layer to this that I found both fascinating and unsettling. The articles mention this concept of a nuclear taboo.
You mean the idea that using these weapons is morally reprehensible, almost unthinkable?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, there's this global understanding that crossing that line is a step too far, even in the midst of war. But the articles also pointed out how fragile that taboo actually is, especially as time passes and memories fade.
It's a dangerous paradox, isn't it? The longer we go without a nuclear detonation, the easier it becomes to forget the sheer terror they inflict. And as the Hibakusha, those living embodiments of that reality grow older, their warnings risk becoming footnotes in a history book.
Which makes their message all the more urgent, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
These are individuals who live through the unthinkable, and they're pleading with the world to learn from their experience to choose a different path.
And it's not just about preventing the use of nuclear weapons. It's about challenging the entire mindset that led to their creation in the first place. That culture of fear and distrust, the belief that true security lies in amassing ever more destructive arsenals. That's what we need to confront.
It's about fundamentally shifting our priorities. Imagine if all the money, all the resources poured into nuclear weapons were redirected towards things like education, healthcare, combating climate change. Wouldn't that be a legacy worth striving for?
Now you're talking. Because ultimately the Hibakusha's message isn't just about disarmament. It's about fostering a world where such weapons are unthinkable, where peace isn't just a word we throw around, but a lived reality.
And that brings us back to our listener to the question of what we can do, each of us, to contribute to that vision.
Yeah.
We've talked about supporting organizations like ICANN, educating ourselves about these complex issues, having those difficult conversations with friends and family.
Yeah. But it goes even deeper than that, doesn't it? It's about examining our own assumptions and biases. It's about asking ourselves, how do I contribute to a culture of peace in my daily life? In the way I interact with others, the choices I make, the information I consume.
It's about actively choosing empathy over apathy, understanding over ignorance, hope over despair. Because in the end, the fight for a world free of nuclear weapons isn't some abstract political battle. It's a fight for the very soul of humanity.
Beautifully put. And it's a fight the Hibakusha have been waging for nearly 8 decades now. They've shown us what's at stake, illuminated the path forward. Now it's up to each of us to find the courage to keep walking that path, to ensure their message continues to resonate long after they're gone.
It's a powerful message. And on that note, I want to thank you for bringing these incredibly important sources to our attention and for this insightful conversation.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Let's all commit to keeping the Hibakusha's message alive in our hearts and in our actions.